Sometimes the offseason hype can drive up the price of a player in fantasy football. Sometimes it's name value alone that keeps the price high. But if we want to continue to win a ton of fantasy football championships in this community, we got to step back, take a look at the big picture. Because the last thing that you want to do is draft a player too early and have him destroy your team in 2023. But first, I owe a draft guide to a random winner from a previous video. From my quarterback rankings video, it got over 500 likes, so congratulations to Keys to the Door. I already responded to your comment and got your response back through email. You were lightning fast. Congrats on your free draft guide. Let's do this again though, because this video is gonna be a banger today. I mean, it's going to be a good one. So if this video can get over 800 likes, I'm going to pick 2 random winners down below in the comment section for free 2023 draft guide. So be sure to hit the like button, leave a comment down below so you have a chance of being randomly selected, because I'm about to blow your mind. Here we go. So here's what we're looking at. I got 3 players in today's video. Some are skyrocketing up the ADP. Some didn't drop much due to off-season changes. Now, I am by no way saying that these guys suck or they shouldn't be drafted or that they're bust. That is not the purpose of this video. I'm saying that if you risk it this early with these guys and pass on other proven studs with similar ADP, you could be in trouble if they don't live up to all the hype surrounding them right now. The first player, gonna create a lot of buzz, but I got a lot of stats to back it up. How about Bijan Robinson, running back of the Atlanta Falcons? And that right there is how you get the attention of a YouTube audience. You bring up a big name player that so many people love this early in the offseason, but he's already teetering between like running back 2, running back 3 area, an early first round pick for a lot of people here in 2023. The guy has a lot of hype. I understand it. And honestly, I love myself some Bijan Robinson. He's arguably the most electric running back we've seen come to the NFL out of the draft since maybe Saquon 5 years ago. He can do it all. He can run between the tackles. He can beat defenders to the outside. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He can line up in the slot. He can do everything. He's also had 498 touches over his last 2 years in college, only 22 games. That's an average of 22.6 touches per game. But I understand why. He averaged 7 yards per touch in college and was a constant game changer there for Texas. But with all of this hype comes a ton of expectation in the NFL. As a rookie being the 8th overall pick in the draft, that's to be understood, but that expectation is going to carry over into fantasy football as well. On multiple sites, he's listed as the running back 2 or 3, which is crazy high. And if I'm being honest, that kind of scares me because there really isn't any value. This guy at that position needs to score over 300 points. Otherwise, he wasn't worth the fantasy pick. And we've really seen this over the last couple years. The top 3 running backs over the last 3 seasons have averaged over 315 points a year in half PPR scoring. Out of the 9 running backs to finish in the top 3 over the last 3 years, 3 running backs, 3 years, 3 times 3 is 9. That's right. Only one of them has failed to go over 300 points, and that was Joe Mixon in 2021, where he had 266.9. So 89% of those last top 3 running backs scored over 300 points. Odds are saying that Bijan's probably going to have to do the same thing if we want him to finish top 3. But 300 points is no easy task. That's the equivalent of like 1,800 total yards on 72 receptions and 14 touchdowns just to return draft value. The only running back to do that as a rookie in the last decade was Saquon Barkley. Now, we still have an unproven quarterback in Desmond Ridder, an offensive line with solid pieces that really haven't lived up to expectations as of yet and dealt with a lot of injuries here in the past, a high-end pick in Kyle Pitts, who has underperformed, and really only one alpha wide receiver on the outside in second-year receiver Drake London. Heck, I haven't even mentioned Tyler Algier yet. Now, no, I know he isn't going to take like half the work away from Bijan Robinson, for sure. But even if he gets 5 to 8 touches per game, that could hurt Bijan, especially if any of those touches come on the goal line, because we just talked about how he needs like 14 touchdowns to return that draft value. So ask yourself this question. Do you believe that Bijan Robinson is going to have one of the greatest rookie seasons ever at the position? Personally, I would feel a lot better if I could get him at like the running back 5 price. That leaves room for him to exceed expectations. But maybe you're saying running back 3, running back 5, who cares? It's super close. But it's really not. The running back 5 over the last 3 years has only scored on average 247 points, something a lot more attainable with some room to overperform and 50 points less than the top 3. So, just so you know, if you decide to take Bijan Robinson at that running back 2 or 3 price tag and he doesn't perform at an all-time level for a rookie running back in the NFL, it's probably going to hurt your fantasy chances here in 2023. Maybe you're a Bijan truther, a believer. Maybe you think that 1,800 total yards and 14 touchdowns and 75 receptions is totally attainable. Take your guy if that's what it is. Personally, though, that is a huge ask of a rookie running back on a team who hasn't been overly successful in quite some time. And really, we don't have to go back very far to see what it's like to have a top pick kind of bust, right? Ask the Jonathan Taylor owners from last year how they fared after their first pick kind of bombed a little bit for them as well. Now, if you enjoy this type of deep diving information, do me a favor, consider hitting that blue join button underneath the video. Become a channel member. It'll get you access to our Discord community, which is absolutely fire. You're also going to get bonus content, more chances to draft with us, and whenever we're looking at comments on videos, we always look for the members first, so consider hitting that blue join button right now. Okay, next, how about, oh man, now I'm gonna piss off everybody in this video, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver, New York Jets. And I don't know if I've seen more hype for any one player this offseason than I have for Garrett Wilson since Aaron Rodgers became a Jet. Now, people get downright feisty and pissed off with you if you don't have Garrett Wilson as a top 10 fantasy wide receiver in 2023. Trust me, I've put out wide receiver rankings and I've seen what people think. And I get the draw. I really do. The best wide receiver on an Aaron Rodgers-led team tends to be a pretty good fantasy asset. But if you look back over recent time, Aaron Rodgers really has only had one alpha wide receiver to throw to, so maybe that's why they overperformed. We haven't seen the duo of Jordy Nelson and Davante Adams since 2017, and it's really only been Adams up until 2022 when he left and went to the Raiders. But do you know who led the Green Bay Packers in targets last year? Do you know who finished second in targets the year prior when Davante Adams was still there? It was Allen Lazard, who now also plays for the Jets, and they just paid him $22 million guaranteed. They also brought in Mecole Hardman. I know, not a ton of volume, for sure, but he could definitely steal away some touchdown chances, and we'll talk about those in a minute. They still have Corey Davis, Tyler Conklin, CJ Who's Your Mama at the tight end position, another offseason sweetheart for fantasy players, Breece Hall in the mix as well. Their offensive line is back and healthy. They just drafted Joe Tippmann in the second round to play center, and that offensive line as a whole should be a lot better in 23 than it was in 22. Now, I don't know how healthy Breece Hall is going to be week 1, but I do know that this is going to be a team that should be capable of running the football successfully. But now we have Garrett Wilson all the way up to wide receiver 10 overall, 20th overall pick in fantasy football is where he's projected, a second round pick. Now, on average, the wide receiver 10 over the last 3 seasons has had 209 points and a half PPR scoring. That's an equivalent to 1,400 yards on 90 receptions and 4 touchdowns. A pretty big season, but it's not like he was that far off of it already. Last year, with inconsistent quarterback play, he had 147 targets, 83 receptions for 1,100 yards and 4 touchdowns, was wide receiver 19. But his volume isn't going to increase much with Aaron Rodgers. The guy had 147 targets last year, already 7th most in the league. So that means he either needs to improve his yards per reception or maybe bring in more of the targets that he's actually getting. Well, he averaged 13.3 yards per reception last year at the position, which is way above average. He only had 5 drops, so there's really only room for slight improvement there. But the biggest bonus he could see is hopefully in catchable targets, and we've talked about that this offseason. He only had 64% of his targets in 2022 deemed catchable. But if we go back and compare what the catchable target rate was for Davante Adams with Aaron Rodgers, we see that 80% of his targets were deemed catchable. Better quarterback play, a 16% increase in catchable targets. So what would Wilson's season have looked like last year with that type of catchable target number? For fun's sake, let's just say that he brings in all 16% of those catchable targets. Every single one of them he brought in for a reception. That would take him from 83 receptions to 96, from 1,103 yards to 1,276. That would mean 96 receptions for 1,276 yards and 4 touchdowns, 199.6 points in half PPR, and that would still be 10 points off of the wide receiver 10 average over the last 3 years, and that's if he caught every one of those additional catchable targets. So in reality, it's really going to come down to touchdowns. He needs more of them if you want him to perform at the wide receiver 10 level or better. An offense with some familiar faces for Aaron Rodgers, some additional weapons, a solid run game. It's really hard to go into a season and bank on a touchdown number for a wide receiver. Can I see him getting those wide receiver 10 numbers? For sure. Is it going to be easy? Not at all. And as for outproducing his ADP, that's going to be really tough, and kind of why I have Garrett Wilson really in that wide receiver 12 to 14 range, with 10 kind of being a fingers crossed, I hope he can get there this year. And then lastly, I have Mark Andrews, tight end of the Baltimore Ravens, currently tight end 2 overall, the 34th overall pick, so a 3rd round selection in fantasy here in 2023. And this is one of those instances where the name value is boosting up the price to a point to where it may not be worth it. So a little bit different than the last 2 guys that we've talked about, but the tight end position is hard to figure out, right? You have Travis Kelce, and then a jumbled mess after that. But for the last couple years, Andrews has been one of the best tight ends in all of football. He's been Lamar Jackson's favorite target every single time they've been on the field together. But there's a reason for that, and it's really because for the longest time, he's been the only option for Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. The wide receiver 1 in Baltimore last year was Demarcus Robinson. 48 catches for 458 yards and 2 touchdowns. Prior to that, the 3 years prior to that, it was only Hollywood Brown. His best season was 2021, where he had 91 catches for 1,008 yards and 6 touchdowns. Prior to that, in 2020, 58 catches for 769. In 2019, 46 catches for 584. Hasn't been a whole lot of options, and the last time I checked, Hollywood Brown ain't there no more. He's been in Arizona for a year and a half. So Andrews has kind of been the binky of Lamar Jackson since they came into the league together in 2018. Hasn't been much else to really go to, but the Lamar Jackson contract extension, that drama is over. Dude got the bag. Good for him. But he's also got more weapons this year than he has in years past. Odell Beckham is there. I know he's not great, but he's got to be better than anything they had in 2022. Remember, Demarcus Robinson, 48 catches, 458 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Could OBJ get that this year? I think so. Plus, 2021 first-round pick wide receiver Rashad Bateman back and healthy. They just spent another first-round pick on another wide receiver in Zay Flowers. We have J.K. Dobbins, who should be back and 100% healthy. A lot of people, myself included, loving Isaiah Likely as another tight end option in Baltimore, but yet Mark Andrews is still sitting at tight end 2 overall. Now, over the last 3 years, the tight end 2 overall has averaged 204 points in half PPR scoring. That's equivalent to 90 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 7 touchdowns, which doesn't sound horribly unimaginable for Mark Andrews, but Andrews has only had numbers anywhere close to that one time in his 5-year career, and now he has more competition for targets than ever before. Outside of that one great year for Mark Andrews, his season high in receptions is 73, yards is 852, and touchdowns is 10. Even if we take his highest season totals outside of that one good year, It's only 182 fantasy points, 22 points shy of the average tight end 2 overall. Take all of that and add into account that Lamar hasn't played a full season. That makes it even more scary. If you take Andrews in the third, it means you're passing up on some great running back and wide receiver options, and that could really come into play later in the season if Andrews isn't balling out and now you're short on depth at one of those positions. Personally, I'm probably not going to be going after very much Mark Andrews. I would rather wait a round or maybe even 2 and grab TJ Hawkinson and play it a little bit safer, in my opinion. Now remember, I'm not calling these guys a bust, and I'm not telling you to avoid drafting these guys. It's my job to give you all the information and all the details so you can make sure you make the best decision for your fantasy team in 2023. Are there any other names that you feel if you draft them and you're wrong that they could destroy your team? Leave that comment down below. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you haven't already, and consider subscribing if you're looking for all information fantasy football in 2023, because we have you covered. But for now, hopefully you have a great rest of your day and do your part to make the world a better place.